Hey guys, it's DBJ. It's another Eclipse phase video, and I'm going to talk about ego casting. In Eclipse phase, ego casting is the ability to go to a location, you download your brain digitally, and you cast your brain, send it as a signal, all your thoughts, your dreams, your emotions, to another location, and it is downloaded into a cortical stack, and from there you can either interact, quote unquote, move around in a VR environment, or as majority of your time will be inside of a morph, whether it's a biological or a synth morph, which is a mechanical morph, or something that's a combination called a pod. And when you arrive, that cortical stack is placed into its morph, and you're able to walk around. Now, it's a given in the game that because Eclipse Phase does not have, the original book, does not have any space vehicles or any rules about space travel in it. It gives some vague distances and the time span it takes to get there. Although, if anybody has any knowledge of intergalactic space and where the planets would be and their rotations and stuff, you know that those numbers would vary widely, and it would be very difficult to tell distances from Earth to Mars, from Mars to Venus, from Venus to Neptune, from a moon on Jupiter to a moon around Saturn, etc., etc. That being said, the game misses nothing by not having a fully fleshed out space combat travel vehicle system in it, because it's more efficient to ego cast. Now, there's a black market version of it, or a espionage, hey kitty, a system called dark casting, where you ego cast from one place to another, but there's no record of it. All right. Now, the reason why I'm going to talk about ego casting is because, for the most part, most games are going to go, okay, okay, guys, you're on a satellite in Earth's orbit, and you're going to ego cast into Venus and pick your morphs, and this is where you're going to go. Or firewall agents realize that there's a panic situation in the outback of Mars. You're going to ego cast from a space habitat outside of Neptune. You're going to go into Mars orbit to a habitat there, and here are your morphs. But here's the thing about ego casting, all right? The minute your brain becomes digital information, it can be reprogrammed any kind of way. Now, the baseline of digital information in Eclipse phase is that all digital signals sent cannot be corrupted. They can be detected, knowing that, yes, a digital signal has been sent from one place to another, but unless someone has the key to open up that information on either end, it cannot be corrupted. And the reason for that would be because then in that case, anytime someone ego casts, you could just delete parts of their brain out. It would just be that simple. So that's the baseline. But when you arrive, okay, let's say you're on Luna, the moon, and please don't call it the moon. They hate that. You're on Luna. You want to ego cast out to Mars. So the first step is finding a place or a way to ego cast. Now, there are emergency ego casting units available. They're probably about the size of a grain of rice, and it uses some kind of neutrino signal, and you can have it attached to your cortical stack. So what I mean to say is that you get shot in the head. Just before you get shot, you can then ego cast your brain out of your body. Your head explodes. The cortical stack in your brain, made out of stacked carbon, diamond carbon, is destroyed, but your brain signal transfers out and goes into your backup cortical stack somewhere else. Sure, okay. But let's say you're your average citizen and you have to go from place to place, or you're playing an espionage game and you have to hide. The first step is finding a place to translate from and transfer into. All right. And the act of transferring out and arrival means that there may be some kind of record. So you have to hide that record. Now, if you're an outster, person that lives in the outback, far away from Mars and the inner system, usually it's generally referred to that Mars and the asteroid belt that's right outside of Mars's orbit and everything inside is called the inner system. And being outside of that asteroid belt is called the outer system, and you might be an outster. Living outside that system, the anarchists out there really don't keep very many records, or would want to keep those records. You know, nobody needs to know who you are and where you're going. But arrival is the other important thing. You know, arriving, what do you do? So here's how I imagine how it would work. When you send a signal, that signal would both include your brain and a synopsis of what you would want physically. So you could either ahead of time schedule a location and say, hey, listen, I want to be inside of a synth morph. This is the type of synth morph I want. Please have it prepared for me before I arrive. There's also the fact that of where you translate into, whether you receive a synth morph or a biomorph, whether the location you arrive even has a morph like that. So you may want to go from, let's say, Mars, and now you want to go from a habitat orbiting Mars, and you want to go to Mercury. Well, Mercury may not have very many choices or even labs to grow a biological body, or have very many synth morphs that are not appropriate to surviving in a high gravity, high radiation, high heat area. And then here comes the other problem too. If you're trying to engage in surveillance and espionage and hide and seek, when you arrive, they know who you are. The baseline assumption is that each brain is individual. Even if copied, each brain itself is an individual in and of itself, and they will know who you are. So you have to finagle some kind of way to hide your arrival. Now, Firewall's really good at this. You can also arrange it beforehand, or have some kind of programming attached to your egocast that will hide who you are when you arrive. And here's the other thing. Do some psychosurgery. You can get rid of, let's say you went on a black op, you can actually delete the information out of your brain of the black op so that when you arrive in the new location, you don't have that information anymore. Yes, I'm getting complicated and getting kind of in detailed in here, okay? All right, so now your brain arrives, you show up. What is the legality of you arriving in this new location, all right? If it's a police state, or there's a lockdown, maybe there's some kind of an emergency happened before you got there, and now there's a police or military lockdown. Well, they're going to interrogate everybody that arrives from an egocast, or they could cut off the egocasting completely, and you won't be able to arrive in. Or they'll hold you off into a VR cell. Now, a VR cell is a virtual reality cell where they can interrogate you and you cannot get out unless you've made prior arrangements. Maybe your muse, which comes along with you, has a code that will allow you to bypass security. And Firewall has given it to you, or maybe you've acquired this over time from some anarchist or from a scum barge or someplace like that. And you've acquired this information, but you're going to need it when you get there. The other thing is, after you arrive and get out of holding, if they hold you there, and you pass your interrogation and you pass all the specifics, what kind of morph do you arrive in? Depending on the legalities of where you go, the morph that you ordered may not be the morph you even end up inside of. You go to some of these black marketplaces and you say, hey, I spent, I gave you 100,000 credits and I used my rep to get myself a huge combat morph, and you end up with a used synth morph case that has a bad servo in the leg and is dented and rusted in spots and squeaks when he walks. It's possible. You can make a whole game environment just out of ego casting. What happens when the party escapes from an op and ego casts into, say, the moon, and they arrive and they think they're going to be in the bodies and location of one place, and they aren't. Or they leave the inner system and translate out to the outer system with all the information from this black op, and they arrive in the outer system. When they get there, somebody out there is like, hey, you know, I know you guys did something because I've went through your brains when I put you in my VR holding cell, and I picked your brains. I know something's wrong, so here's the deal. I'll let you out, but you owe me something to keep my mouth quiet because I want to get paid. All these things can happen. They make really great stories. For Eclipse Phase, it can get really complicated. And the last issue is one of sustainability and consumer consumption of bio and synthmorphs. And that is, are there enough bodies for the number of people ego casting in to be inside of? Does that mean the players have to rent a body for a short amount of time and must return that body back by, 36 hours? Hey, you paid for a week. We'll give you the second week for half price if you want to rent it for 2 weeks. Or do they get custom bodies, and where does that custom body come from? Okay. So, and lastly, there's a human rights issue. In Eclipse Phase, there are lots of infugees, a reference to information refugees. These are people who left the fall of Earth, and when they left Earth as nothing but digital information. They left all their belongings behind, their loved ones, hoping for a new world and a new life outside of Earth and in Earth's orbital system. The problem is, many of these people were in cold storage. And is it fair for player characters to run around, jumping from body to body, morph to morph, ego casting all around the solar system, while innocent people were held in cold storage? That's for your players to decide, for the person running the game to decide if those moral choices come up. But those are really great things to encounter inside of your Eclipse Phase game. So just be aware. Sure, hey, you want your character, you're running a game and you want them to do like a galactic hop. They go from the moon to a satellite to a habitat to Mars to Venus, back to Mercury, out to Neptune, into Saturn, out to Jupiter. Absolutely do it. Don't limit yourself. But just imagine a game where the whole thing is set up where the players go into Mars. They think they're all together, and all of a sudden they're all scattered all over the planet in different holding cells. One person's just in cold storage. Another one's in an old case morph. He's got to find his partner. His partner's in a biomorph that's in a sex shop and didn't want to be there, and things like that. The police hold on to another one, interrogating them because they think their code comes in and someone swapped the code because that person that swapped the code is a notorious criminal and swapped their notorious criminal code with yours, so they think you're the notorious criminal just hiding because they think that you had psychosurgery to change your brain. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit detailed there, guys. Sorry about that. Anyway, it's DBJ, ego casting, Eclipse Phase. I love the game. I'm signing out. Hey, nanofabricate, don't disintegrate. Thanks, guys.